So lately I have been making art in two different ways. One is my usual fully digital style, the other way is a mixed media style that combines traditional and digital art. And today I want to show you how I scan my pieces and how I prepare them for coloring on Procreate or whatever it is your software choice. This process is very similar to my normal coloring style, but there are some little differences that I want to show you today. It's very fun and nice to implement traditional art into my digital pieces. It is nothing too difficult and special, don't worry. I'm not the one who invented this method, of course, but I love to make art like this. It allows me first of all to practice my traditional art, because after all these years of drawing digitally, you might lose that perception of the paper and the real pencil, which is something I obviously do not want to happen. And of course, I can also experiment with different traditional media like watercolors, alcohol markers, etc. So today I'll show you the simplest way to bring your traditional art into Procreate. Today's video was kindly supported by Printful. Printful is a print-on-demand service where you can find hundreds of high-quality products that you can customize with your own art. They have a huge catalog going from apparel to accessories to home design products, literally whatever comes to your mind. For example, for the shop I am working on, I am focusing on a couple of curated products like the tote bag I showed you last week, which turned out so pretty, a mug, and a big desk gaming mat that I am currently designing. Today I am working on the mug, and I made this design with one of my favorite illustrations that I ever made, but I also drew this cloud-like sky to go behind it and really adapt to the mug. As you can see, the customization interface is super intuitive and easy to use, and when you're done designing, you can save it and then connect Printful to your shop, create the listing, customize the name and all the details, and you're done. They will take care of printing and shipping, so you can only focus on the creative part. You can obviously order samples for yourself and of course to see how the products turn out and what your customers will receive. I actually just ordered the mug sample while filming this and I can't wait for it to arrive. As an artist, creating a shop can be very daunting and it can sound like a huge amount of work, which kinda is, but Printful makes it easy since the products are printed on demand and there's also zero waste. As always, you'll find a link in the description below if you want to try it yourself, and thank you so much to Printful for supporting my art and this channel. So if you plan to work in this style and scan many of your pieces, I recommend to get a scanner. As you can see here, I am using my printer which has a built-in scanner, but you do not have to get a huge printer. Actually, I don't even use this as a printer anymore. You can find pretty affordable scanners out there that can actually achieve the quality you need for coloring your pieces. So you don't have to break the bank to get the best top-tier scanner. If you don't own a scanner yet but you want to still try this technique, you can also take a nice picture of your artwork. Just make sure that you are in a well-lit room, that there are no shadows casted on the paper, and you are good to go. Of course, the quality won't be the same as the scanner, but just for giving it a little try, it will be completely fine. Now, it is important that you set your scanner to the correct parameters, or otherwise your file will not turn out in the best quality. I recommend to set it in photography mode. You can set it to black and white or colors, but of course it depends on what you have done on paper already. In this case, I'll set it on color because I have some small colored pieces in both the artworks and I want those to show through, but if yours is a simple pencil sketch, you can obviously set it to black and white. And now I always choose from 600 to 1200 dpi, and I know it might sound like a lot and your piece will indeed turn out very big, but I prefer to do it like this and then redimension it later on if I want to, so I can have the freedom to make it as big as I prefer. This also allows me to go really into detail when coloring. Of course, keep your scanner super still while you do this, and this is how your piece will turn out. As you can see, it's very big and perfect for coloring. Now it's time to fix it a little bit and adjust some things, so I usually import it into Affinity Photo or Photoshop if you want to, but you can also import it directly into Procreate if you wish and do this from there. So I simply start by adjusting the white balance and contrast and highlights. Sometimes I also change the line art color, as you've seen in some of my previous videos, but in this case I prefer to leave it in black and maybe do it later on, because this won't be a super detailed piece and I really want lines and pencil to show through. So I'm just going to tweak it a little bit, and again in this case I do not want it to be extremely perfect, so I'm going to leave some of the paper texture showing through too. This is the stage where you also want to resize your canvas and crop it to the size that you prefer. And then I bring the piece into Procreate. My general coloring process is the same, with a couple differences I'll show you in a second. The main difference is in the fusion method we use for our base color layers. As I said before, for this artwork in particular, I want the paper texture and my watercolor shading to show through, so I will work on multiply layers from now on. All my base color layers will be set to multiply, so for skin, hair, the dress, the eyes, etc. Multiply, in simple words, will make your color translucent, so whatever is below those layers will be visible, which is what I want today. And as you can see now, I duplicated our artwork layer and started playing around with the curves, because I want the line art to have a warm tone. Now, you could potentially separate the entire line art, but in this case, since I want all the little details and that sketchy vibe to show through, I prefer to work this way, so I can also see the paper below. To do the base colors, as you can see, sometimes I do it by hand, so I stay within the lines, pretty much I color in. Sometimes if I want to do it faster, I just select that space and then I fill it in. It's really up to you. Sometimes I really like to relax and simply color in, and if I am in a rush, of course I use the fastest method. After I'm done with the base colors, I go ahead and start shading. This part is pretty much identical as my usual style, so we work on clipped layer. And to do this, I create a new layer above the base, I tap on it and select clipping mask. You know, the usual process. You can clip as many layers as you want and they will all be tied to the base. In this case, we are working on the skin. I'm not going to do some heavy shading now, because of course the watercolor is already doing the work. What I'm doing is giving some color to the cheeks and deepening some of the parts that I want to be a little bit darker. Normally I also clip the highlights, but we won't be doing that this time. Since our base is set to multiply, if we clip the highlight layer too, we will pretty much make it transparent, and we don't want that. Let's leave it untied and work on our highlights in a normal layer above everything else. You can also set this layer to add, which will make it very luminous and shiny and pretty, which is what I often do. Here I'm also adding some freckles, and I will also work on the makeup if I want to put some makeup on the character, of course. And for the makeup, I will work in both layers, so on the shadow layer and the highlight layer. Of course, all the brushes I'm using here are a combination of my basic shading set and my various special effects sets that you can find on my Ko-fi. And for the eyes, same process. I clip the shadows and leave the highlights unclipped. The only difference is that since our highlights are separated, you need to erase the parts that go outside of the iris. Just a little step more, nothing too annoying. I have an in-depth eyes coloring video in case you missed it, I'll leave it here. Eyes are the only thing that I color a little bit more with that digital vibe, because it's kind of my signature detail for all my artworks, so I really want to make them consistent throughout all my pieces. So my coloring is pretty much identical to the other digital pieces I do. But for the rest of the piece, I like to let the watercolor do its thing. And for the dress, I won't do too much, just a touch of color. And at this point, I also like to bring to life any of the accessories, like she's wearing a microphone, so I'm shading that, the ear clips, the earrings, etc. For the hair, the process is exactly the same, but this time I will only keep the gradient color I did at the beginning, because as you can see on this piece I already did the shading traditionally and I don't want to cover it, so I'm not going to shade it further. I will only make a new layer, again not clipped, for highlights. You can set this layer to add again if you wish to give it that luminous effect. Here I'm also adding some transparent sparkly sleeves, and in this case, same process. I will set the layer to multiply, but I will lower the opacity to about a half, so they can really give that transparent fabric effect. And finally for our ambient light. This is what I call rendering for my pieces, and what I do is simply create a new multiply layer over everything else, or you can make this above the highlights, it's your choice, and this will be our shadow. I'll go for a bluish purple, very desaturated, and with the eraser I start erasing all the parts where I want the light to hit. I am pretty much painting light on, and then I create a new art layer, same drill. This will be our main light hue, and since the character has all cool tones, I will go with a warm orangey light. You can make this as intense as you wish, or you can skip this step altogether. I just love how it brings the artwork to life, so I always do this. And then I'm just tweaking around. As you can see, this process is much less detailed than my usual full digital pieces, and that is the style I am pretty much going for when it comes to coloring traditional pieces. You can obviously go even more detailed, that is completely up to you, and after I tweak the last details with the highlights and clean up the background from more of the shadow that I didn't erase before, we are pretty much done. I hope this video was helpful and fun and gave you some inspiration to try new things. If you want to go more in depth in my coloring technique, I have a full video that guides you step by step. I'll leave it in the card above, and I hope you enjoyed the video, friends. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. Thank you so much to all of you, and of course to Printful for supporting my art and my YouTube journey. See you next Sunday. Take care. Bye.